Black Monday is one of the most misunderstood days on the NFL calendar. Fans treat it like a purge, media treats it like chaos. But inside front offices, Black Monday is actually about one thing: direction. And it's the day organizations decide whether they believe in the process they've built or whether they've reached the end of the road with the people leading it. And every year, the same mistake gets made. Coaches get blamed for roster problems, other coaches survive despite obvious structural failure. And a few names get talked about endlessly, even though the decision behind the scenes has already been made. So in this video, I'm not going to do a fan meltdown list. I'm not going to react emotionally to standings or headlines. I'm going to break this down in a way an organization actually would approach it. And first, the thing that you should know is coaches people are talking about being fired, but absolutely shouldn't be. And then second, we're going to look at coaches who probably should be fired, but won't be because of ownership hesitation or organizational inertia. And finally, we're going to get to what I actually believe is going to happen on Black Monday and the coaches that I think are actually going to get fired and which team should be looking and how they should replace them. And this isn't going to be who I like or what I would do. It's what I actually think the organization is going to do. So let's start with the coaches who are getting the most heat, even though they should be anywhere near the hot seat. And so to kick things off, the first coach I want to talk about is Shane Steichen with the Indianapolis Colts. And he's only delivered 3 straight 8-9 seasons since coming to Indianapolis. And a lot of people going into the year thought that he was firmly on the hot seat. And then the Colts came out and were the greatest show on turf. I mean, they're at one point 8-2, looking like a runaway to be first in the AFC. They then go pull off a trade for Sauce Gardner, send 2 first-round picks, and then it all went downhill. Daniel Jones, torn Achilles. Sauce Gardner, calf strain. And they're completely injured, and it looks like they're lifeless and rudderless, and we get an amazing comeback story with Phillip Rivers. But ultimately, they miss the playoffs again, and a lot of people are still murmuring that, well, the Colts should just fire and move on. And they actually came out with a report today saying that they're going to be back for the next season. It's the absolute right move. I've always held the opinion that Shane Steichen is a top 10 offensive mind in the league. And to me, if you fire Shane Steichen after what he's done to build offensively while surviving some of the worst quarterback play in the league, you're not fixing a problem. You're admitting you don't understand offense. And that actually brings me directly to the other coach that I think is getting so much unfair heat, and it's the coach in Miami, Mike McDaniel. So he's also not going to be fired, and I don't think he should be, and I think anyone calling for his job, once again, doesn't understand where organizations are and what they see with what they have. Mike McDaniel was able to coach some of the best play possible that Tua Tagovailoa could ever have in the league. And now that he's finally gotten rid of the actual bad culprit in Miami, Chris Grier, their GM, I think he's deserving of another season to actually see what he can build in Miami as they try to navigate this post-Tua era and try to navigate some of the bad rosters on, or some of the bad cap on their roster. And so the first coach that I want to talk about in this section is actually a rookie-year head coach. And it's not often that I'm ever going to advocate for, and I think organizations should ever do, is the one-and-done head coach. We did see it last year with Gerard Mayo and the Patriots, and you see where they are now. They're the number 2 seed, the AFC, and they hired an incredible football coach, and they paired it with organizational realignment. The coach that I think this should be done to, unfortunately, is Aaron Glenn with the New York Jets. I think he has been an absolute abysmal hire for the New York Jets and what they're trying to accomplish. They just finished as the first team ever since this stat was recorded in 1933 to record 0 interceptions in the league. His defense has been bottom 5, and he's supposed to be a defensive-minded head coach. And I think that the Jets organizationally have set themselves up to be a very exciting, young, offensive-leaning team with how all the talent that they have on offense. They have 5 first-round picks in the next 2 years. They have Garrett Wilson and Adonai Mitchell and Mason Taylor at tight end. I mean, this is a lot of elements for an offensive-minded coach. Imagine what Clint Kubiak could do in this situation, or even if you went and got Cliff Kingsbury and paired him up with a Dante Moore in the draft. I mean, I just think where this organization needs to go, I think Aaron Glenn's a bad misfit, and I think that he should be fired, but he won't be. The second coach I want to talk about is Zach Taylor. He's the man that I think everybody would agree should be fired. We saw his arch Padawan with the Titans get fired after a year and a half, and I think if the Bengals want to resurrect Joe Burrow's career and keep him from retiring before his contract runs out, that's what they should do. I don't think he knows how to evaluate defense. I don't think that his game clock management is very good. I don't think that his run game is very innovative, and that's why they always are out of shotgun and they're always having to throw it 40, 50 plus times a game. But he won't be fired because the Bengals have the worst and most cheap ownership in the entire league. I mean, we saw everything that happened with Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart in the offseason, and they don't like having to pay coaches not to coach because coaching contracts are completely guaranteed in the NFL. So unfortunately, Zach Taylor won't be fired, although I think he should be. And so the first head coach that I think everybody knows is getting fired, unfortunately, and they don't believe that he should be, but is going to, is Kevin Stefanski for the Cleveland Browns. His tenure has been high highs and low lows, from the highs of the Joe Flacco 2023 years, or even when they won their first playoff game in franchise history, when he coached the best season of Baker Mayfield's career at that point. And then it's been the low lows of trying to get Deshaun Watson to even play recognizable football, and then having to roll out freaking Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders this year, and the offense looking lifeless and rudderless. And I think it makes the most logical sense at this point for the Browns to move on from him, because culturally, I think he's just lost the team of getting the buy-in, and I think he's going to get immediately picked up and actually have him fitted in for a fit for one of these other teams that I think is going to get fired. But he's going to be fired on Monday. I think everybody knows that. And my prediction for where the Browns go and how they're going to fill this is actually going to be a little bit out of the water, because a lot of people don't think a primo head coach candidate would want to go to the Browns. But I think the most logical hire for them and what the organization is going to try to target is a young defensive mind that's going to maximize all of this talent they've accumulated on their defense, especially with now the NFL record holder in sacks, Myles Garrett. And I think they go get Jesse Minter from the Chargers. And, walk with me a little bit here, because Jesse Minter is probably going to have the pick of the litter this cycle of head coaching interviews and where he's going to want to go. And everyone couldn't believe when Ben Johnson kind of decided to go to the Bears because, Caleb Williams, and they've been bad forever, and it was a divisional, and they thought it was a weird fit. Well, this seems like a weird fit, but why it makes sense is, like I mentioned, all this defensive talent they have, and it's young, and they've got multiple first-round draft picks to make it even better if they want to. I just see it as a very easy way for Jesse Minter to go in and make his side of the football so elite and continue to be really, really successful, and then figure out the offense later. And so that's where I think the Browns are going to do in this situation, and I don't know if it's what I would do in their shoes, but I think that's where Jimmy Haslam's going to try to go. So the second coach that I think is going to be fired, which a lot of people are saying he's not going to be, and the only reason I think that he wouldn't be is just because of how cheap the ownership is, but Jonathan Gannon for the Arizona Cardinals has got to go. I mean, they have one of the worst defenses in football as a defensive-minded head coach. They've given up like 30-plus points for the past 7 weeks. I mean, it's going to be every single year that he's been there, they have not made the playoffs or even had a winning record. I mean, I don't see how the guy stays. And where the Cardinals kind of go from here is that for all of the 3 years of the rebuild that they have, and Kyler Murray being out in the window and getting rid of Cliff Kingsbury for this regime, it looks like a lot of bad moves have been made. But they've got some good talent in the trenches on offense and defense, on both offensive lines and the defensive lines. They're going to have to move on from Kyler Murray, because how his contract is stacked is if you don't move off of him now, basically all of his guarantees fully vest for the next 2 off seasons. So I think that whatever head coaching candidate they go after is going to be faced with an absolute clean slate with no real strings attached for what they're going to get. And I think they're going to have to go for a very under the radar, younger head coach that probably shouldn't be hired, as it can get hired before he should be. And I think the candidate they go with is the offensive coordinator for the Bills, Joe Brady. And the reason that I believe that is, they have good offensive line. They have the best tight end in football, which is exactly how Joe Brady likes to design his scheme around, is the tight ends and running backs. They're going to have a primo top 5 pick to where Joe Brady's going to be able to probably get one of Ty Simpson or Dante Moore with it if they choose to go that route. I could also see them rolling out Jacoby Brissett and punting the proverbial football, if you will, to 2027. And Now the next coach that I want to talk about is the oldest head football coach in the league, Pete Carroll, for the Las Vegas Raiders. Everyone at the time loved the move of what they did of getting in Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, but unfortunately, Pete Carroll has, destroyed his legacy. It's been 5 years too long, probably in the NFL, and this season for the Raiders is one they've got to just move on from and bury. And he might have been the best arch tank commander in NFL history to go 2-15 and deliver the number 1 overall pick. And so, after his firing, there's been this rumored pairing, and I love it if it actually comes to fruition. And I'm going to go ahead and make it my prediction because Tom Brady is supposedly the de facto chief of football operations for the Raiders and calling the shots. And what better guy to go get and say F it to the league is a guy who's always said F it to the league and go hire Brian Flores and bring in the Patriot way to the Las Vegas Raiders. And I think it makes a lot of sense because then, flip side of that, I think they go get Brian Daboll to be the OC for the Raiders. And so that's been a rumored pairing, and it's going to just get louder and louder because of who is their de facto chief football operator, Tom Brady. And I love it for the Raiders. They go get Fernando Mendoza, number 1 overall, and pair him with Brian Daboll and let Brian Flores win you football games. That's all he's ever done as a DC and head football coach. And I love that for the Raiders and the direction that they're going. And the last coach that I think is going to get fired is Todd Bowles for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, And there's no way that he shouldn't be. The only way that I don't think he is just because he signed an extension and they don't want to pay that money out to him. But he lost the locker room. It was clear as day. There's no way you go to 5-1 to 6-2, and then you proceed to have a stretch to where you lose to the Saints twice, the Dolphins, and the Panthers. I mean, they were one of the worst football teams, going 2-7 in the home stretch to finish 8-9. Like, you can't do that. And I just think he lost the locker room. If you see the proverbial verbiage of Mike Evans, the way Baker Mayfield was acting, Levante David, and I think that if they're going to maximize this window of what they have and the talent they have, the time to move on from them is now. And I think just what is such a swift kick in the balls is he's hired 2 OCs that have gone on to go be head coaches that have proven to be successful without him. And it makes you wonder all the success that he has had has been because of these OCs. You look at the team that is making the playoffs over them, Dave Canales. That was one of his OCs. You go look at Liam Cohen and what he's doing with the Jags. That was another one of his OCs, and it makes you start to realize the success that they have had has been because of the OCs that he's hired. And so what I think would make the absolute most sense that they go out and hire is go get Cliff Kingsbury from the Commanders. That would be such a fun fit and pairing with previous head coaching experience that can command a locker room, give a lot of weapons to play with on the offense. I think him and Baker Mayfield, from their connection back in college, would make a lot of sense, and I think it would maybe right the ship going out in Tampa. And so those are the head coaches that I think get fired, and those are the people that I would go replace them with. And Raheem Morris has officially been fired from the Atlanta Falcons, and when I was recording this video, I was trying to predict it, get it out in time for you guys, but unfortunately, the Falcons made their firing a little earlier, and I saw this coming from a mile away. I mean, if you want to check out one of our previous videos, we talked about how it's been the biggest waste of talent in the modern era for football, and so their GM's also been fired, so it's going to be a complete top-down search for the Atlanta Falcons, and where I think they go from here, it makes the most sense is they go get Clint Kubiak from the Seattle Seahawks and make them their head football coach. He's someone that had a lot of success with the Saints, a lot of success with the 49ers, even more success now for the Seahawks. He knows the division. They have all the talent in the world on offense. He can maximize Kirk Cousins with his abilities, his play action scheme, and the Shanahan tree. And that's what I would do, try to navigate this upcoming season and be competitive in a division that I think is going to have another firing in Todd Bowles. So that is kind of your snapshot prediction to know what to go go into NFL Black Monday for all of my hardcore football watchers that are looking for anything that they can kind of find before Black Monday really gets rolling. And I appreciate y'all rolling with the Sideline Journal. I want to deliver more content like this in the off season where it's not an hour-long podcast. Maybe it's a more digestible 15-minute video. Appreciate y'all watching if you stuck to the end of this, and we will catch you in the next episode of The War Room next week when we do the playoff preview for the wildcard teams. Peace out.